You know, these are indeed very special times in our land. If you can bring together a Wolverine and a Buckeye for a conversation.
There we go.
And so I'm really thankful for our special guest today, John Cook, joining us, PGA Tour Champions player, Golf Channel analyst, 11-time tour winner, and a guy who probably, like me, is just kind of tired of being stuck inside the house. How are you, man?
I'm good. It's just nice to talk to somebody. We don't get out much, and when I do, it's only talking to a couple people at a time. And good to talk to you. Even though this does make Buckeyes and Wolverines can get along and look eye to eye and have a civil conversation.
Well, it's an interesting time because it's actually provided a lot more opportunity for conversation. If we were in the middle of the season, if things were happening right now, you would be on the road somewhere with the Champions Tour, either playing or commentating.
Right now I would be in Atlanta right now for the Mitsubishi Electric Championship there at TPC Sugarloaf. I'd be on the ground calling some action. So it is an interesting time, and glad that we can keep the conversations going, and a lot happening in our game with schedules and plans. So let's keep our fingers crossed that good things can happen.
Having been out between the ropes as long and as many times as you have, can you wrap your head around what it would be like to have a full tournament with no fans, no gallery?
Well, I played enough rounds of golf in my life with not many people around. So, but you do miss that. And you do feed off the emotions of the spectators, and you feed off the emotions of what's going on around you. So it'll be very interesting, at least for the first month. I think they're going to try that and see how things go. But it's an interesting dynamic when don't have anybody out there rooting you on, because you do feel emotion from the spectators.
Well, I've been really trying, John, throughout all of this to maintain some degree of positivity and trying to find the good that comes out of this bizarre situation, this time in history. And the best thing that I could come up with for a tournament with no patrons is we don't have to listen to the mashed potatoes moron yelling.
Baba Boo and all that
as
stuff.
As a player, do you pay attention to that? Do you care about that? Does that ever annoy you as a player or as an analyst?
Not really. I think because you're kind of in your own little bubble, I don't really hear much of that. I do know that when my wife or my family members or friends are out watching and they hear some comments, it bothers them more than it bothers me. I'm kind of, like I said, I'm always out there in my own little bubble. But there's some interesting comments made. I guess the old talking ticket. They paid for that talking ticket, so they feel like they can, say anything they want. And unfortunately, it's kind of gotten that way at times. And don't know how a lot of the big stars deal with it. I didn't have to deal with it a whole lot. Although my wife has told me some stories about some comments some people have made that she's not shy to go up and tell them, kind of right the ship and tell them what's going on. But I wasn't real privy to a whole lot of that. But I can't imagine what guys like Tiger and Justin and Dustin and Rory, some of the things that can be said to them, I think are pretty amazing.
I'd like to explore that a little bit further. I realize that on the PGA Tour Champions, the galleries are usually a little bit older, and we'd like to think a little bit more mature.
Right. Yeah.
But on the PGA Tour proper, there's far too much alcohol consumed, and by the time it all takes effect, I think that's when you start to see some of the boorish behavior come out. There are some players, as you mentioned, who have the ability to put on the blinders and block it all out. And then there are some that have the Colin Montgomery kind of rabbit ears. But in his defense, man, there was some stuff hurled at him that was way over the top. So what is the line? Where does a player actually stop their walk down the fairway and turn and address whatever's happening?
Yeah, when it gets personal, and your family is out there, or something personal in your life, and somebody brings up it in a derogatory way, that's crossing the line. And you bring up Monty, and I have not a great story. It's an unfortunate story, but along the lines of what you just said, I was paired with David Duval and Colin Montgomery at Wingfoot. I was 49 years old, but I had played well the year before at Pinehurst and got in on, off that category to play at Wingfoot in 2006. And I played with David Duval and Colin Montgomery. And Colin was playing beautifully. We were all playing very well, actually, by the way. But Colin was spot on. Obviously, he went on and had a chance to win that golf tournament. But the things that were said to him for 2 days there at Wingfoot, and he does have rabbit ears, and he can look around and he can stare you down. I apologized to him off the 9th green on Friday as he played beautifully. He might even have been in the lead. I made the cut that year. I think David played well, so I apologized to Colin off the 9th green, just saying, I am so sorry you have to put up with that stuff when you come over to the United States, because we love having you. You're a great player. I don't know what to say. He says, I can deal with it. I can handle it. It's just, as he puts it in his way, it's just water off a duck's back. And that's kind of the way he handled it. And God bless him for being able to do that and shut that out. But man alive, it was pretty brutal what he had to go through.
Well, I would think at some point enough is enough. And you mentioned that your wife would walk along with you. That's one thing that the drunken morons don't understand, is that there are most often there are some relatives, friends, family members in the gallery that are they're out walking along with the person that they care about.
Yeah.
That might be the hardest part of it all. I mean, I don't know how some of the spouses or friends restrain themselves from hauling off and delivering a roundhouse to some of these idiots.
Yeah, I know some of my friends, they wouldn't have any problem with it. But my wife, she's pretty sharp-tongued. And if something was said that she just knows better, and she would set the record straight. She'd put them in their place. And God bless my wife. She's been with me for 45 plus years, and maybe that's why, because she will defend her man like I would defend her to as far as it would go. But she can defend her man, and that's I've always appreciated that.
Well, that's good. That's what she's supposed to do, right? That's how it works.
Exactly. Right.
I mentioned in the introduction to John Cook that he has 11 PGA Tour wins, and now I'm going to test your recall, because the first one, the 1981 Crosby Clambake, as they came to call it, right? You're out there at Pebble, and Bing Crosby's the host. This is still when he's there. It's not just name only. And you win the Crosby. How well can you recall that time? The first one's got to always be front of mind, I would think.
It was, and I can recall it like it was yesterday. It was a very, very interesting week. We didn't get started until Saturday, the first round. Thursday and Friday got rained out, so everybody's kind of finishing all over the place. And my rotation was, I played Cypress Point on Saturday, I played Pebble Beach on Sunday, and I played Spyglass on Monday. James Garner, the great actor, was my partner. Great
Rockford
guy,
Files.
Great man. The Rockford Files. He was Rockford, all right, and good, nice player. We had a nice few years that we played together, but because everybody was finishing all over the place, nobody quite knew, where you stood. They had leaderboards and stuff, but not like the electronics boards that they have now. So you were just relying on whatever the leaderboards were saying. And I finished it at Spyglass. I made a nice little 3-footer on the last hole on the 9th hole at Spyglass to finish, I think, at 7 under par. There were guys at 9 under par. There was all kinds of things going on. So when we got done, they said, everybody, if there's a playoff, it's going to be at Pebble Beach. So you might want to go over there. I said, guys are at 9 under par. I'm not going to be at any type of a playoff. And Barney Thompson was it was in the house at 7 under par. And he was in the tap room at 7 under par. And then weird things started to happen, and all of a sudden there were 5 of us at 7 under par, getting ready for a playoff on the first hole at Pebble Beach. So it was Bobby Clampett was one, Ben Crenshaw, Hale Irwin, myself, and the aforementioned Barney Thompson. If you look up Barney Thompson, he was a 6'5" from West Virginia, big, athletic looking guy, but he'd been in the tap room for we'll say a couple of hours, because this was going to be his best finish of his career. So we all meet on the first hole at Pebble Beach, and we kind of hit down, and Barney was the fifth to hit, and he kind of popped up a three. It didn't go very far, and then he kind of pull hooked like a 4-iron or something into the first green, out of bounds, up in the trees, I think it was Lee Brandenburg's house was up there, and he just turned around and said, "Guys, tied for seconds, good for me. I'm out." He didn't.
He's walked off.
So just walked right off. Back to the tap room goes Barney. One of the great stories of all time. But three of us then make a birdie on the first hole. Bobby Clambake made a birdie. I hit it in there pretty close, made a birdie. Hale Irwin also made a birdie. Then Hale and I birdied the second hole, and so now we're going down. We're playing the third hole by ourselves, and like you said, this is my first win. I'd had some opportunities earlier in 1980, but this was the time. And I hit a beautiful second shot in there about 3 feet, and Hale had hit it over the green in 2, kind of chillied a pitch shot, and then hit it down there about 2 feet, or about 1.5 foot for bogey. And I've got this 3-footer. All I'm trying to do is I'm trying to just cozy this thing down there. If it falls in the hole, it falls in the hole. You know, those greens at Pebble Beach in the 80s, they get a little bumpy. I hit this beautiful putt, and it's going around the right edge of the hole, and it hits the right edge of the hole, and it spins out, and it goes down there about, just inside his marker. He's putting for bogey, I'm putting for par, and I'm looking around, I'm fumbling for a coin. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm basically choking my guts out. And I've got this, 18-incher to win my first golf tournament. And I'm looking at him, and he's knowing I'm gagging like crazy. And he looked at me, and at the time I didn't know what this meant, but he goes, "I suggest you putt out." And I thought maybe he was gamesmanship type of thing.
Yeah.
But it comes out later, and he told me, he says, "I knew that you were having trouble. It was not a gamesmanship thing. I thought that if you continued on, you'd be in better shape if you just kept going. Because I like you. I wanted you to win as much as I wanted to win. You're a good young player. You're going to be out here a long time. Your first win's important. And I just thought if you kept going, it was going to be easier for you to make that putt."
Wow.
So somehow I got it in the, I made the putt. And later on, he told me that. I thanked him for that, because I was getting pretty nervous. My wife was there. She was, man, I could barely get that coin out of my pocket.
Well,
it was so crazy.
And John, what were the dollars that you were competing for?
Back then, because it was a 3-round event, they cut the purse by a quarter. So
Nice.
it was, yeah. So I made a $40,500, which in 1981 for newlyweds and child in July, that meant all the money in the world. I mean, it was a life changer for me. I could pay back my grandfather, who had loaned me and sponsored me he gave me some money to start the tour. I got to pay him back, and then we were flush. We were on our own after that, just driving around and playing golf. But that first win at Pebble Beach, where I spent so much time. My father took me there in 1972 to see the U.S. Open, and I'll never forget that. And from 1975, we played our California State Amateur was there. So from 1975 till last year, I played in an event at Pebble Beach every single year. So whether it was a state amateur, state high school, the Bing Crosby, AT&T, on into the PGA Tour champions. There's been up there a lot, played a lot around there. So that's the first win. Actually, my final win in 2014 was at Pebble Beach as well for the Nature Valley First Tee Open, which is now the Pure Insurance. So Pebble Beach is very special.
Just a couple observations from that account. One, it's nearly 40 years ago, and you still have full memory, full recall of all the key shots, right?
We're golfers. We're golfers. We remember. I'll tell you.
Isn't that astounding?
My father could actually maybe remember all my pairings. I mean, he was talking about clicked in. I can't go quite that far or remember the scores, but I can remember tournaments and situations for sure.
And the other observation is back then, and probably up until Tiger started exploding the purses tenfold, they used to hand out giant novelty checks to the winner.
Yes, they did.
They don't do that anymore because I think from a social perception standpoint, it would not look very good for somebody to get a
No.
$1.3 million check.
Right.
Do you still have the giant novelty check?
I believe there's a couple that I do have, and they're in storage. Half of our life is in storage right now because we've been down much. But I think that my wife has kept a few of those big checks. Yeah, they're somewhere. I wish I could bring one out, but I know that I know we've got a couple of them.
You had a knack for winning tournaments hosted by famous celebrities. You won the Crosby, you won the Hope in '92 and '97. Did you get the chance to meet Bob Hope at that time?
I did. In 1992, he was he was an old man, but he was very coherent, and he was excited that a desert guy won the Bob Hope Desert Classic. I think it was the Chrysler Classic back then too, Bob Hope Chrysler Classic. But he knew that I had played. I got a sponsor's exemption in 1980 when I was my first event on tour as a PGA Tour member. And I would never forget that. I played every single year up till I couldn't play anymore. In 2006, I think, was the last time I tried to play. So I got to know him fairly well, being a desert guy. And I remember in 1992, he was pretty emotional that a desert resident won the event. And he was quite nice to my family. My kids were little at the time. And then when I won in '97, he was starting to fade just a little bit. So they had to walk him out, and he wasn't quite as coherent as he was in 1992. But, great memories around there, being a resident of the desert for so long, and, winning in front of friends and family, and Mr. Hope being, so much a part of the desert and part of that environment. Those were special times. Those were special wins. They're not huge wins on the grand scale, but they were huge wins to me.
But it's also one of those, I don't know, one of those unique characteristics of the game that I wish we still had around. I know that Timberlake has a tournament, but aside from Justin's tournament, I think I can't think of another celebrity-hosted deal where you brought together the world of entertainment. I mean, still at the AT&T, you'll have celebrities come in, and we get to watch them golf on TV for a few days, which isn't usually very entertaining. But at the same time, there was something special about this, where it was just cool to be there, where you never knew back then if Sinatra was going to show up or if Dean Martin was going to walk out, that kind of a thing, because they all wanted to be there. And now that golf has become corporatized, which is fine. It's corporatized, and the money has gone up. It costs a good $5 to $7 million to host a tour event, so we get that.
Sure.
But it just seems like we gave up something in exchange for the large purses.
Absolutely. Back in the early days of my career in the early '80s, you had the Bob Hope Classic. Then you went to Phoenix, and I think Dean Martin was part of the Phoenix Open. Then the Joe Garagiola Tucson Open. Then you went to the Bing Crosby. Then you went to the Glenn Campbell LA Open. Then you went to the Jackie Gleason Inverrary Classic. I mean, you had and Sammy Davis Jr., the Hartford Open. I mean, it was classic way back when, and we tried to come up with and find ways. When I sat on the board of directors for the PGA Tour to, keep incorporating. I knew this, corporate sponsorship was what it, is what it is. But we always tried to keep, some sort of a connection to the past, and, hosted by. You could at least have a, the Nissan LA Open, hosted by Glenn Campbell or something like that. We could have done that. The Chrysler Desert Classic hosted by Bob Hope, something to keep that connection. And they did for a little while, but then it kind of fell by the wayside.
Yeah.
So, but there was great connections back then.
You've had the decision, the moment of decision at some point to fully commit to being an analyst or continuing to play or trying to mix the two of them, which I would think would be especially difficult. Right. Where are you?
Yeah.
Where are you in that equation, and how tough of a choice is it?
Yeah, that's a great question, Bill. In 2013, I was still very active on the PGA Tour Champions. In fact, I just won an event early in the year, the first event, the Mitsubishi Electric Championship there in at Hualalai in just outside of Kona. And I had this opportunity to, Golf Channel came to me and said, "Hey, would you like to be part of the morning drive show at certain times?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll dabble in that." And one thing came to another, and I started doing more and more television just for the morning drive there on Golf Channel. As I went along, 2013 was a nice year. 2014, like I said, I won at Pebble Beach, so I was still playing and still competitive, but I was dabbling a little bit more and more into that side of the camera, doing the morning show, and I enjoyed it. Then they started asking me if I wanted to do some live golf, and I got to thinking. I go, I'm, at that point in time, I'm, late. I'm 57, 58 years old, and I'm thinking, where am I going to be in like, 5, 7 years? What am I going to be when I'm 65 years old and, not competitive at golf anymore? And, what am I going to want to be doing? And so my wife and I talked about it, and, I said, I need to have a long-term plan. My short-term plan is to still, train and work and try to get better at golf. But I just wasn't getting that. And I think your point was, it was a great point, is it's hard to mix the two together. But I love, talking about the game. I love, with my connections through Venturi and Byron Nelson and Hogan and Nicholas and Weiskopf and, all my experiences. I wanted to stay, a little bit, relative to the game. And so I made the conscious decision that I was going to pursue this for a while. So I kind of went into semi-retirement. I cut down from playing, 25, 26 events to, 17, down to 12, down to just a few. And as we speak now, I have signed my retirement papers. So I'm retired from the competitive side of the PGA Tour Champions. I can play up to 4 events. So I try to mix in a couple events here and there, but I'm fully committed to this side of the camera, and I so enjoy being out walking the golf courses and talking to Lanny. We have such a great crew with Bob Papa, Lanny Watkins, Billy Ray Brown, John Mahaffey recently has moved on, retired. So whether Phil Blackmore or Aaron Oberholzer is in that seat, it's a great crew to work with and talk about our experiences and maybe bring a little different side to walking the fairways and talking about a golf shot, because on Saturday and Sunday, who better to talk to than Lanny Watkins, who's a Hall of Famer.
Right.
Billy Ray Brown won tournaments. I won a lot of tournaments. So there's a great experience on, I've won tournaments. I've lost tournaments. I can tell you how to do both. So,
Well, I think also, John, everybody who's listening to our conversation right now clearly has a love for the game of golf, and they know that if you're going to play it at the highest level, it's a full-time commitment. But
right.
I don't know how many people truly understand the difficulty of being a golf analyst, a broadcaster, and I think that also requires a full-time dedication. You are training. You're probably watching
learned.
Tape. You're probably getting an earful from a producer if you did something you shouldn't have. And all of that isn't just a frivolous or casual activity. They see us talking right now, and this is conversation, but this isn't network presentation. There's nobody telling us you got 7 seconds till break. There's nobody telling us you got to get over here for the third shot of a guy you haven't been following the entire round. And can you take us inside the headset, so to speak, and what a different world it is from what maybe you thought it was going to be at first?
Yeah, the studio and doing walking the golf course are two different animals. So doing the studio, you do have a producer in one ear, and you've got audio in the other ear, and you're constantly getting feedback on, like you said, we need to wrap, or John, you got 20 seconds, or just the traffic, just learning the production value and the trafficking of when the host comes to you, and then where you go after that. So just getting that down, I think, was the most difficult part. I learned a little trick to where I did turn the volume down for the producer just a little bit so I don't get confused. I can barely walk and chew gum at the same time. So listening and trying to talk to somebody is a little different. But so once I kind of got that knack, I started to understand it more. Now on the golf course, I'm trying to be more of, I'm playing this golf shot, but I am verbalizing what I'm trying to do without hitting the shot. So that to me, the producers like that. Instead of just calling the shot, I'm trying to think out loud on what I would be talking about with my caddy, and then what I would be seeing as we go through the procedure and the routine, and what I'm actually seeing in the golf shot and that value. So Friday's stories are different than Saturdays. Saturdays is much different than Sundays. So I've been working with such a great crew. Like I said, the talent crew is, I think the credentials on our talent crew is unprecedented I think in the game of golf, on what we've all done and the experiences that we have. Great quarterback with Bob Papa. When he moves on to football, Whit Watson comes in. He's also very, very good. But the producers that we work with are phenomenal, and they give you room to breathe. So learning the traffic of when it comes to me, and then I try to set up the golf shot, and then I send it right to Lanny Watkins, because that's what we want to hear. And then we can have conversations. Once I get it back to Lanny, then we can have a conversation about the golf shot. And we may agree a lot, we may disagree. Lanny was a little bit different player than I was. So, we can have discussions about what's going on. And that's what's really great about what we're doing, is explaining to the people and to the audience on what we're thinking, what we're seeing, and then just let the golf tell the story.
Well, I've never been in an air traffic control tower at a major airport, but last fall when the Ally Challenge came to Michigan, to Warwick Hills, Brant Packer and the team were kind enough to let me sit in the main production trailer, and I was just an observer of how the broadcast was put together. And I thought to myself, and I was in there, I think, on Friday. So I thought to myself, okay, I'm in here on a Friday of a Tour Champions event. So it's an important event, but it's not the biggest event that golf has ever staged on this day.
Right.
And yet the number of pieces that were involved in the puzzle was staggering. And I was watching Brant, and this is kind of inside baseball, but I was watching him, and he was as calm as the day is long. And
he's as good as there is. And he might be the best producer.
And during a break, he turned to me and he goes, "So, what do you think?" And I said, who is telling you where you're going next? What shots? Who's hitting what shot? He goes, "Oh no, there's two different voices in my ear that I'm talking, and I couldn't hear those voices." I was blown away, and I've been doing television for a lot of years, but not in that setting, and it was really quite impressive. So that learning,
the production is crazy.
Do you watch game film, so to speak, of yourself? Do you critique yourself?
I do go back. I used to go back a lot and watch the replays at night. And then I learned a lot from that, because I was making mistakes. There's no doubt. But the producers let me learn, and they all suggested that I go back and learn and watch tape. So I would do that, and now I have a much better understanding on the time frame that you have, what you can say in that short time frame, and what's important, what's relevant, what's not relevant. And like I said, the quicker that the quarterback or Bob Papa gets it to me, I can set something up and get it to Lanny. Now we understand the timing of golf shots and who you're talking about, and the timing of that shot, and then getting on to the next one. Brant will go away, show somebody else, come back to me, go to Billy Ray. So it's a great dynamic, and I got a lot better just by self-critiquing and understanding what I was talking about, and being able to phrase it in short period of time.
Yeah. One last area I want to explore with you in the couple minutes we have left. This is tough for me. I'm a Wolverine. You're a Buckeye. But I'm fascinated to learn what it was like to play for the golf program that Jack put on the map, and know that shadow was looming over everything that took place in Columbus. What was it like for a young John
Yeah, it was
Cook?
Crazy. Yeah, coming out of California, and I got severely questioned as I was, committed to Ohio State. My father's born and raised in the Columbus area, and he had big ties to Ohio State. He went to Denison and played football and basketball and baseball. And, he did go to Ohio State for graduate school and became a graduate assistant. So he was a football coach there at Ohio State in Ohio. So we had great ties there. But coming out of California, and I took all my visits. I took, SC, UCLA, Arizona State, went back to Wake Forest, Oklahoma State. So I took all my visits. And, I think for me to go back to school there, obviously the program was a great program for the Midwest and a northern school. But I needed to get out of my little Southern Cal bubble. I was going to go to Arizona State, UCLA or Arizona State. Those were the next ones. But I needed to get out of that bubble and get away and experience something different, whether it be on the golf course or just in life in general, and be part of a program like that. And Coach Brown developed an incredible program while we were there and beyond. He recruited athletes. We were all athletes. We were all good at something else besides golf. And I think that's why we all gelled so much as a team. And we were so good with the tradition of Jack and with Weiskopf and Ed Snead, Jerry McGee, the great players before us. We knew what that meant, and we knew what it was to be part of, an institution like Ohio State. So I had Ohio State blood in me starting out. So I knew what the program was going to be about and where we could go with the players that we had. We had an incredible program, and it just got better and better to where in 1979 we won the NCAAs down there at Wake Forest. So, being part of that team, and we have a reunion every 5-10 years of that team. And that just tells you what kind of a special program it is. And whether you're at University of Michigan or Ohio State or some of those Big Ten teams, to have teams that were competitive at that point in time was very special. So I'm a Big Ten guy. Root for the Big Ten anytime I can. No matter what. So I grew up in Trojan Nation. I live in Gator Nation. And, I'm from Buckeye Nation. So that's where my heart is. So playing and being able to represent the institution was, a great pride in that. No doubt about it.
And does Jack touch base with the players in the program when you're there? Do you hear from him and he says, "Hey guys, go get them"? Is there some sort of a consistent involvement? I know there's a display of his memorabilia there, but is there a frequent involvement?
Yeah, good question. So back in those days, alumni could help recruit. So Jack would help in the recruiting process, either a phone call or write a note or whatever. Then you couldn't do it, and I think you can do it. There's limitations of what you can do. Tom Weiskopf
hang
was
on,
great to the program.
John, no, at Ohio State there are no limitations. They do anything they want. We know that.
We know that.
Just write the check.
That's it. That's the way it goes, right? But Tom was great to the program. Whenever he was in town or in Columbus, he would call and we would go play golf. He kept in touch a lot. I played a lot of practice rounds out on tour with Tom. So we became quite close. Jack always had a great interest in the program. So if he was around, he would come out and watch. Tom would do the same thing. All the great alumni would do that. So it's to be part of that and have those guys interested in the program. I mean, one of Jack's sons did go to Ohio State. Gary did go to Ohio State and had a very nice career there. So it's a family. It really is. I still. I'm on a text chain as we go through this situation that we're in of my college teammates, and we still keep in touch, and we still care about each other, and that's just the brotherhood of what we did and being part of that team.
Well, I can't thank you enough, man, for spending a little bit of time with us. I know that you're in Florida, your wife is in California, and being separated is not easy during these times. So I hope that everything works out well with the medical situations and all those things. And when we can breathe again, when we don't have to wear a mask, and when hopefully you're back in Michigan for the Ally later this year, I'm going to come.
Look forward
I'm going to come track you down and maybe even trail
Please
you.
do.
I'll see if Brant will give me a headset so I can hear all the
Oh.
confusion that goes on. And
Oh,
we'll
absolutely.
look
You'd be my
forward to it.
shadow. You'd be my spotter.
I'd
It'd be
love it.
perfect.
I
I'd
would
love to do it.
Good. John, thank you so much, man. It's been a pleasure.
My pleasure. Anytime, Bill. Love it.